Good afternoon, everybody. There you all are. Good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar in the series of information security, governance, risk and compliance seminars that Risk Crew have been running for the past 12 months. This is the second in the series of our SOC 2 webinars. So welcome aboard, everybody. SOC 2 is a security framework primarily designed for software infrastructure or platform as a service providers. It's a US framework, but it's been rapidly getting a foothold here in the UK and in Europe as your customers have been asking for SOC 2 audit reports. So hence the webinar this afternoon. We'll be looking at all things SOC 2, but particularly from a perspective of how to prepare for a SOC 2 audit. So if you can try and contain your excitement, that's what we'll be covering this afternoon. If you have any questions, please keep them coming. I'll be monitoring the questions and I'll try and weave them in at the correct point, but we will also have some time for Q&A at the end of this session. So I can see from the audience, it's about a 50-50 split of customers we've worked with before and new people. So welcome everybody. Just very quickly, who are Risk Crew? Well, we are an information security, governance, risk and compliance consultancy practice, and we also have a full portfolio of penetration testing services. Most importantly, we're vendor agnostic. You can see a full breakdown of all of our services on our website. Why are we different? Well, it's in our DNA. Customer satisfaction, knowledge transfer is in our DNA, and we give all of our services are backed with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. So some of the things that make us different. Apologies, I haven't introduced myself. How rude of me. I'm Nick Roberts. I'm Director of Business Development and also the Key Accounts Director here at Risk Crew. I've been here for 6 years, and prior to that I had another 15 years of experience in information security. Information security. We will be joined very shortly by Richard Hollis, who is a director here and one of our principal consultants. And I can confirm he is a cranky old man who I think is going to go on vacation directly after this presentation. So Richard will join us in just a second. So let's just take a quick look at the agenda. So with SOC 2, it's all about preparing for a SOC 2 audit is all about getting your ducks in a row. So Richard's going to be looking at the preparation steps. Most SOC 2 audits are client-led. It's your clients that want you to do this. So let's make sure that the scope's right and that you've covered the correct criteria. Look at control mapping, joining the dots between your controls and the evidence. Evidence is everything with SOC 2. That's what the audit is going to need in order to produce the SOC 2 audit report. So make sure the evidence is queued up. If you are fortunate to have certification to ISO 27001, there is significant overlap. So Richard's going to take you through that, along with sort of typical timelines in preparing for onboarding an auditor and actually going through the audit and achieving the audit report. Typical timelines for SOC 2, and then hopefully we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A. So at this point, let me see if my colleague Richard is there. There he is. Good to see you, Richard.
Good to be seen, Nick. And nice shirt. Nice shirt. You guys
can.
Yeah, we need to pick up some more high definition in camera, because on camera you can't see the intricacy of Nick's summer attire. But
yeah, I've got various filters on this camera. to
For all of our sakes. Yeah, thank you for that.
to tone down the vulgarness of my shirts. Over
Thank
to
you.
you, Rich.
Thank you, Nick. I think I'll hold on to that. Thanks. As Nick said, okay, where should I start? Let me start here. So this is the second in what we had planned for at least 3 webinars on the topic of SOC. The first one was SOC 1, 2, or 3. Do you know the difference? But full disclosure, the feedback we got on from that last webinar was that this SOC thing surely is very, very complicated, extremely complicated, and that's not what we wanted to portray. In fact, absolutely not. New to the UK, certainly. Complicated, not at all, not at all. And so we wanted to take another swing at this and be able to put some information together that's a little more pragmatic, a little more straightforward. I think because, as Nick said, it's a US-centric compliance framework, and the fact that it's done by an accountant, those two things together make it seem a little daunting for some reason. But at the end of the day, it's not that at all. It's about auditing controls, and we've all been down that road. So anyway, we thought we'd put together some steps to prepare, walk you through a natural preparation evolution, a cycle, and give you some tips on how to crack this a lot easier, and maybe take a little of the fright away. So the very first step I'm gonna give you is take a breath. Take a breath. I don't know why, but the customers we've been talking to, SOC 2, are really seem to be hyper, and I give them a little. I finish my lunch and give them my lunch bag and say, breathe in this bag, breathe in, breathe out. Like I said, you've been down this journey before, and they're ISO compliant. They're compliant to HIPAA or to DPA, and at the end of the day, this is just another framework, very different, but another framework, and we shouldn't at all be afraid of it. So my first step was to prepare is just relax. Relax. You should know this route very well. Certainly, if you've put together an ISMS and put together or made an attempt at even CE Plus or ISO 27001, you know what an information security control is and what you need to produce in terms of evidence for somebody to come in and be able to check that box. So the rest of these are pretty pragmatic. It's okay. If you're relaxed, then take another look. And we're talking about SOC 2 now. Do you want the type 1 or the type 2 report? You got to select a report. And then I'm suggesting then you go ahead and select the trust service criteria, the 5 criteria that we talked about previous. We're gonna address those again. Then select the criteria and then confirm the scope. Confirm those criteria to the services in scope. And as you're doing that, along the way, you want to go ahead and start to select an auditor, which is a crucial process and shouldn't be underestimated in terms of the relationship you're going to have with this auditing firm. So selecting it should be part of the process, is a critical part of the process to prepare. And then you've got naturally, just like a gap assessment, you're going to be gathering your documentation, figuring out where you have evidence, where you don't, and that's done through control mapping. Here's the requirement, here's how it maps to, here's my policy, here's how it maps to the control, here's how it produces evidence, etc. And then once that's once that's underway, you identify the gaps, you remediate those gaps, and you should be ready for an audit. So it's a typical very, very pragmatic step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 approach, but and this is my point, no difference from you taking on an ISO 27001 gap assessment. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about selecting the report types. All right, so if you listen to us on our first webinar, we said this is the difference between SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. So you should have been that far. And if you're not that far, go back and listen to that webinar because that's what it was all about. Which is the right SOC for you? Now it's we're talking about SOC 2. This is primarily what people have here in the UK. 90% of the clients we've interacted with want to know more about SOC 2. So when you're selecting a SOC 2 report, you've got 2 options, right? And you should these are fairly clear. A SOC 2 Type 1 provides just an opinion on whether you have controls, okay, and it's given at a certain point of time whether those controls should be suitable to the services that they're scoped to. It's got a review date, and it's a statement of control suitability. So it's very much, you need to understand, it's very much, okay, as of last week, Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we had an auditor come in and say and verify that the controls were suitable for that design on Thursday at 3:30, and that's what it is. All right. So it's very much a shot in time. It's a very much a Polaroid picture that doesn't improve with age. It's got a date right on it, so it can age very quickly to a potential client. And then the next thing, obviously, is the SOC 2 Type 2 report. And this is a whole. We just did a recent a blog I saw about apples and oranges. This is a whole different fruit. This is a SOC 2 Type 2 confirms that yes, that they're designed appropriately, but more important, they're effective, and they've been effective over a period of time. All right, so differing from a SOC, a Type 1 report, now we're talking about not just not last week, Thursday at 3:30 in the afternoon, but for the last 6 months, the last 9 months, the last 12 months, that these controls were reviewed and have been proven to be effective. Okay, so it's over a period of time that makes all the difference in the world. The review period can be 3, 6, 9, or 12 months, and that in and of itself begs the question: how much is how long is a piece of string? A 3-month review, a 6-month review, a 9-month, or a 12-month. But at the end of the day, it's a report that verifies that these controls are in fact effective, and we've had our finger on the pulse for 3, 6, 9, 12 months.
Rich, sorry, quick question. So you're saying that the end user defines whether it's 3, 6, 9, or 12. Is that right?
That's not right. It is.
That probably leads to my next question: is what determines the length of the review period?
That's a good question. I can't answer that one either. Or meaning, I can't give a binary. 3 months for 3 months for this, 6 months for that, 12 months for this. Okay, so a review period, you would pick this out in conjunction when you sit down with your auditor. You understand the complexity of the environment, the number of controls in the environment, how many services are in scope. So this is, I use that term, how long is a piece of string? This really is in play. So you need to determine, all right. And of course, what do your customers want? Do they want the assurance that your controls were reviewed over 3 months or a year? And that's a big difference to know that controls were in place and monitored and were effective over a year or just a quarter. And so there's a constant, the difference between what you need to do to provide the client assurance to meet their expectations. But there is also a scoping thing. If it's only one service and it's in a very small cloud environment and it can be easily done in 3 months, that's enough, and that should be enough for your client. But I've seen customer contracts, which is a big pull for why people get SOC 2 requirements, saying they want to see that the controls were audited over a 12-month period. You see, so you could have a contractual requirement to provide a SOC 2 Type 2 report for a contractual period, meaning a customer, a large customer, would want to know, you just didn't look at the controls for 3 months, you looked at them for 9 or 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
go on.
No, it is a very much it is a very, for me, you need to find the logic and defend that logic. But at the end of the day, it's what your clients are going to feel that they provide assurance. You provide a SOC 2 Type 2 report for 3 months or for 12 months. And when you say it like that, and if you're a client and that's made a big investment in this platform, it might make a big difference.
Sure. Thanks, Rich.
Okay, so you've got to select a report, type 1 or type 2. Type 1, point in time, type 2, period of time, and the effectiveness of the controls makes all the difference of the world. Okay, in the world. Okay, then we also address this. You're going to go ahead and select the trust service criteria, security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, privacy. of which you're going to say my services comply with security, availability, processing, confidentiality, or integrity. All right, so each one of these trust service criteria have, of course, different requirements. Let me start out by saying you're gonna be mandated. The security is mandated. All right, so that's we're talking about 33 areas, headed areas there. They're called common criteria. All right, so all SOC 2, Type 2, or Type 1 reports, are going to be aligned to common criteria, which will be a minimum of meeting all of the security requirements. Now, from there, it's almost like a build. So from there, it depends on what you need. So, but first of all, I want you to notice notice how all the TSCs are assessed in their ability to meet the entity's objectives. Okay, so you've got to know what these your organizational objectives. Do you know what they actually are? Do you? Are they written down? This is what the service does. You've got to first confirm that this organization, your products, your services, your strategy are clearly defined as possible, because this is what you align the trust service criteria to. These defined entity's objectives. All right, what do you provide? What commercial promises have you made to your clients? If you're hosting a pensions a pensions cloud platform, a pension software as a service platform, maybe processing integrity is a big deal to make sure that you can guarantee the validity, the accuracy, the timeliness, and that no modifications are made to the data. But selecting this is not an easy thing to do. It's a lot like, as Nick brought up, the difference between selecting confirming a 3, 6, 9, or 12 months. At the end of the day, it's what are your clients' expectations? What are your business expectations? What are your commercial promises that you've made for the services? So maybe you're providing a platform that processes medical data. So I would suggest maybe your privacy, which is all about protecting the subject, personal subject, personal data of data subjects, is going to be critical. And I would suggest that's what your clients want to see. So some of these are obvious in terms of availability, but it's where do you go to pick these? At the end of the day, here's what I would suggest. If you need to ask yourself, if we can't guarantee this principle, all right, will that harm our relationship with our customer? And if it would, then I'd suggest the principle is probably in scope. If we can't tell our customer for this service that we can't guarantee the principle of privacy or confidentiality or processing integrity or availability, then maybe that's in scope with the common criteria. And understand common criteria, that's not optional. So you're always going to be starting there. My 2 pence would be always to start with the least amount required. When clients ask me, they said my customers just need to know I'm SOC 2. And I asked them, have you talked to your customers about their other expectations in terms of the privacy, the confidentiality, the processing integrity, the availability of the data? They say no, their focus is security. And I said, well, that's good enough then. Start right there. You can always add on. The year after, you can add on availability or confidentiality or privacy, or as your service grows. So I would always say less is more. And if a customer asked me to help them select this, and I went through all the commercial promises and their contract requirements, and at the end of the day they had a lot of leeway, I would say start with common criteria and build from that as your organization matures.
Richard, outside of obviously the mandated security criteria, what are the most selected of the optional 4, and why are they chosen?
It's well, everybody. Okay, so that's a good question. And what I've seen is both of our clients, Nick, is as you know, and the stuff that in terms of the bell curve is the majority of people start out with common criteria and availability and confidentiality, because suddenly they've got 3 out of 5, and adding just availability and confidentiality just increases it by 10 to 14%, I think it is. So it's not a lot of extra work. And by doing it, they suddenly go from meeting 1 out of 4 criteria to 3 out of 5. 1 out of 5 criteria to 3 out of 5 criteria.
Sure.
And that's a big deal. by just adding on. So in terms of, if you looked at all of the, at the bell curve, the majority of clients seem to pick out the common criteria and add availability and confidentiality. Processing integrity is a difficult thing. It differs. This is something we're going to talk about, the overlap for ISO. Processing integrity, you get into data flows and inflows, outflows, and it's a lot of accountability. And privacy is very intense. Protecting personal data, personal subject data subject information, very intense. It's like adding GDPR on top of it. And so those two add a significant amount of resources to going after this. So at the end of the day, I think the majority are the common criteria plus availability and confidentiality.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now purposely, I don't know if you noticed this, but what do you do first? You select the common criteria, or you determine the scope? And it's for me, it's a lot like this chicken and the egg and it is an art form. If you just forgot about selecting the criteria for a minute and just went at your scope, and you got the scope wrong, got it too narrow, it's not going to give your customers the assurances that they're looking for. And if you get it wrong and it's too broad, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time and effort and a lot of resources, a lot of money. Okay, so I was saying before, in terms of picking out the trust service criteria, what criteria do you already have in place? And what's going to be applicable to those services? So I advocate looking at the trust criteria in terms of the maturity of your organization and understanding, hey, we're doing that, we're doing that, we're doing this already. All right, we're mature in these areas, and these areas we're not so mature, and line up the services and scope to doing that so they dovetail together. And understanding what you already have in place, along with the last two questions, which are crucial. What does your company expect? And but more importantly, what do your client expect? What does your client expect? At the end of the day, I've seen this determined by our clients in terms of contracts. They're out looking for a contract because they're a certain service, and that service defines the scope, because without that, they're not going to get the contract. So it's this combination of client expectations, contractual requirements, and what your business is looking to do over the long run in terms of what good might be good right now in terms of scope. You could increase that next year, year after that. So the scope expansion is always an option for you. But what do you do first? Determine what's in scope, or determine what trust criteria? I'd say understand what trust criteria you have and build that, and map those over to your scope, and then understand what your clients expect. Okay, crucial. This to me is the key for the whole thing. I'm in consulting. I'm in a relationship industry, and I know right now that the customers we're working with on SOC 2 compliance, this will either make or break the compliance. All right, selecting an auditor is key. This isn't speed dating. It's a 3, 6, 9, 12 months, temporary marriage. You have to understand that you make sure that you find an auditor. Remember, this is an accountancy, an accountant by trade. This is not like finding a UCAS auditor that works in the framework. You've got to find an accountant who speaks, understands the language of your business, and understands the language of information security controls, and mapping those over. So the obvious are confirm their license, and that they're qualified, that they're familiar with information security. Do they audit themselves? I thought one of the best things I've heard recently, I heard this from an auditor who said he was being interviewed for a SOC 2, and the potential customer asked him for a copy of their policies. I thought, that's brilliant. You can tell the difference between, does an auditor walk the walk or talk the talk, and one of the ways to do that is just say, okay, for your accountancy firm, can I see a copy? You don't have to show me, but just show me the table of contents for your information security policy, so I can quickly understand if your company understands how tough it is, how hard it is to implement an ISMS. Okay, so, but one of the other things that came up is you need to understand the way they work and confirm their workflow, their tools. Are they off Excel spreadsheets? Will they bring in a proprietary piece of software? Will they give you checklists and help you prepare? To what extent? And all of this will be found out by you essentially interviewing an auditor and understand what they're going to bring to the table. Are they going to bring to the table their tools that you'll work with? Okay, whether you know them or not, or will they work with what you have, or will there be a happy medium and you start and you find tools that will work for both? But you don't want to find out, for instance, after you signed a contract with an auditor, that you've also have to pay for a 3-year license subscription for a software as a service that they provide, and you upload everything into that portal. No, there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't want that to be a surprise. But I don't know, you can ask them how many previous audits they've done. Now, this is a very US-centric thing, so this is a critical question for UK-based accountancy. How many of these have you done before? Any references? Ask, but very, very critical, ask to see a sample report. One of the big controversies in the industry is that there's no technical template. There's report layouts and everything that have been approved, but at the end of the day, how the report is written, what it says, what it doesn't say, is going to be critical. And you want to see a sample report that's going to be applied to you. Meet the auditor, have lunch, get in a hot tub, do what it takes to understand how the auditor thinks, how they approach, and how much of this is going to be subjectives. Meaning your idea of what evidence that you can provide for your controls may not be his or her idea of what's sufficient for them to sign off on that as effective. All right, so selecting is key. Then the next one, you've seen this before, but for me, this is also critical. You connect the dots, right? You take the criteria, you connect them to existing policy, you connect that policy statement to a control, that control has a control objective, it puts out key performance indicators, it produces evidence, and it has testing requirements, and all those dots are connected. Now, this is absolutely an ISO 27001 view on things, but it clears the lay of the land. It sets the real estate. All right, that you understand, and it looks like this, that you understand exactly what the criteria was. You have your in-house policy reference says this is it, that you align it to a control, and you can say, here's the control owner, here's the location, here's the objective. You could add or subtract to this, but essentially it allows you to look at the control, the relationship between the criteria, all the way through to testing and the evidence on a granular level. And that's key. That's critical for the success of your audit. And it's also critical that you and the auditor see it that way and see things on the same level of detail. So this working with an auditor in a pre-audit and in a get to know you phase to say, this is how I'm looking, this is how I justify, I have evidence that this control works. And you want to get his or her agreement that would be good. Or no, that's not so much. We need a technical verification of that, or we need a procedural verification of that. But it's very, very easy. Just connecting these dots, filling in the blanks, and then what you have is essentially where the gaps are just that's where you need to remediate. Okay, we've got a lot of things that comes up with, well, Rich, I'm ISO compliant, this should be easy. Yes and no. ISO, remember, is all about all business information. SOC 2 is, applies specifically to services and customer services. So a lot of different focus, but does it map? It absolutely maps. Just in the formal definition, the documentation, the constant review, the constant ongoing assessment, communicating responsibilities for providing and management of internal controls, that all aligns. And certainly, if you're just doing the security criteria, there's a lot of overlap for that. So good news, if you're ISO compliant or down that road or been maturing it on an ISO roadmap, you should look really good, as well as things like vendor management and background checks and code of conducts and training assessments and risk reviews and things like this. This is all just part and parcel of, if you've been down ISO, you're going to see SOC lines up to it fairly nice. Nick.
Yeah, a question from the audience. I don't know how easy this will be asked. How easy this will be to answer, Rich. What is the percentage of overlap between the Annex A controls from 27001 and the SOC 2 controls? Let's just say the common criteria security controls.
Well, first of all, it depends what part of Annex A applies to your organization. Okay, so, but in general, it's understood to be between 30 and 40%.
Okay.
which is substantial, considering that you don't have to comply to all of Annex A. But in general, what the understanding is if you're ISO compliant, you're 30-40% on your way. If those same controls, now this is the key, Nick, if those same controls are applicable to the service and scope. And that is this is the thing, is do not assume, well, I've got ISO, I'm a mature organization, I've got ISO, but because now the auditor needs to make sure that those ISO controls you put in are applicable to the service and scope, which technically, and this is where I've seen a lot of clients trip up, because they put them on internal controls for access to internal information that should be restricted. All right, but a public service on a cloud platform or something, and to then map those controls, it's the mapping of those controls that are key. But in general, to answer the question, 30-40%. I actually tried to do it by hand. I came up to 37%, and I just said, I'm too old for this. But that's over a third of the way there.
Yeah, so a very good starting point, but not a given that you'll get. You've still got a lot of work to do, and especially if you've implemented a control as part of your ISMS, and that control is a corporate control, you may find in the context of a SOC 2, that control needs to be a lot more granular.
Correct, or pointed toward the service.
Yeah.
And that's all the difference. And so there still could be quite a bit of work to do. But based on the assumption that the service is provided inside the same environment as the ISO compliant framework, then you should be a third of the way there. Okay, so it maps. It gives you a good push toward that. Now, where it doesn't map is remember is privacy. Completely different. This is private. It's like apples and oranges. The difference between the privacy requirement and GDPR. So you get into the requirements required for privacy, confidentiality, and processing integrity. That's completely different from what you're going to see in an ISO environment. You don't have to produce mapping diagrams for an ISO environment. For instance, information flows. I meant to say for an ISO. Another key thing is you don't have to produce business plans and budgets or roles and responsibilities for the board of directors, which you do for SOC. As well as be able to show that you're doing ongoing fraud assessments for risk assessments for the services. So there's places that it clearly does, like I say, where it maps and where it clearly doesn't. So understand it's not well, I'm ISO compliant, I should be easily SOC 2 compliant. And this is also why selecting your trust service criteria are so critical, because if you are going to go down the route of processing integrity and privacy, it's going to take you off piste from any ISO controls that you currently have in place, whether they're pointed to the service or not. Okay, and as you said, Nick, evidence, this is all about evidence, right? Evidence is everything. There's evidence as you and I know it as in an ISO world, but then there's evidence in a SOC world, in a SOC 2 world. Now, what I would suggest is there's 2 points of this. Understand that evidence in so much as you gotta provide current business plans and budgets. Does your business have a current business plan? I'm sure they have a budget, but a current business plan. Do they have architectural diagrams? Do they have, control documents and specifications, all the way through to screenshots? Are you doing fraud assessment reports on your service? All right, when's the most recent, when's the last audit you have? All the security test reports, all of this comes into play, right all the way down to, security incidents and logs. But here's the key thing about this is, remember, this is how long a piece of string is. Is the audit for a SOC 2 type 2, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year? Okay, can you provide evidence over a year of continual effectiveness? Now, they're not going to be looked at every single day, round the clock, 24/7, for 365 days. But at the end of the day, remember that timing of the evidence to be able to provide evidence in a point in time, like a UCAS certification of an ISO, is a completely different thing than be able to say for the last 12 months, auditors have randomly come in here and verified and got the same evidence, and therefore the control is determined as effective. So it's a little tougher to do it over 3, 6, 9 once there's time involved. And that's what I pull out. Evidence, to be able to produce evidence at a certain time of day, that's one thing. To be able to produce it every day, every week, every month for 9 months, that's a little something different. Okay, now the good news again is all your applicable, all your ISO, you've got ISO compliance or ISO policies, you're building toward ISO, all of that stuff is going to be great for evidence in terms of your policies, your NDA, your change management, your incident response, your business continuity plans, but any screenshots from tools like anti-malware tools and things, your last 4 vulnerability scans, your last 2 pen tests, all the way down to, password and Active Directory configurations, all of that's going to be applicable to SOC 2 compliance. Okay, evidence is everything, and why, when we talk about things like a typical timeline, it's all in preparing. For me, it's preparing. Sure, at the end of it, you'll have 3, 6, 9 months, but what we're talking about here is a simple understanding that from the word that you make decisions, say, okay, in January, we're going to go, let's go. Sometime this year, we're going to get SOC 2, a type 2 report written on it. All right, so in general, now this is just a typical timeline. This is both in us that we're working with clients and typical timelines that have been established by small to medium sized to companies in the United States. All right, so at the end of the day, it should take you about a month to shortlist potential auditors. Okay, and meet with them and interview them. And like I said, get in this hot tub test and understand, is this the right person? Is this the right accountant for me? And in doing so, you're confirming the scope, both the scope and the trust service criteria. So all those 3 things should come together. And then you'd select, after interviewing for over a month, then the next month, and sometime in February, you'd select that auditor and confirm, nail down the scope, and the trust service criteria with the auditor. All right, so that would take that's a typical timeline of 2 months to understand, just get your ducks in order of what's in scope, what trust criteria, and do we have the right auditor. Now, once that begins, then the control mapping begins. And that's technically an easier part, where you map everything, you map the trust service criteria to the policies you have, to the controls, to the control objectives, all the way out to getting testing evidence. But after the first month, but before you're doing that, you're already on your way. You've interviewed, you know who the auditor is going to be. They've provided you with tools, with a checklist, with preparation, with this is what we're going to look. So before you start doing the granular mapping of your controls, you know exactly what the auditor is going to expect in terms of evidence. All right. But then, so by month 4, you're starting to identify gaps. And by month 5, 6, and 7, you're doing remediation. And then it's just how long, and you should be ready for the field work, is what the accountants, what the auditors call it, to come on site and start doing that for 3, 6, 9 months, 12 months. Okay, anyway, but you also did the final thing, you should expect them to produce at least take a month to produce the final report. So a typical timeline can be anywhere from 6 to 9 months, best case, to 2 years, worst case, and that's taking a 12-month audit field work. We've put together a little checklist in terms of a lot of the stuff that we presented in terms of how to quickly benchmark whether your current company current policies are mature enough and you're on the way. So if you're not ISO compliant, but you've been working on policies, you could be Cyber Essentials, you could be, start out with a framework. But at the end of the day, we've put together a preparation checklist. Happy to, if you want it, there's a survey at the end of the course. Just say, yeah, please send me the checklist, and we'll send you a follow-up mail. That's what I had for you. I'm conscious of time here. I hope what you heard was, start small. You can always go bigger. Start with just the common criteria. You can always add on year after year after year. Always, always, always listen to your clients, though. Your commercial contracts are going to determine what should be in scope, what trust criteria you should be selecting. But at the end of the day, we're doing this for our clients, and so you want to make sure that you're plugged in and listening to the clients. But preparation is everything. The more time you take into preparing, so all the knowns. There should be no unknown unknowns during an audit. Absolutely not. And if you follow through and do all the mapping and connecting the dots, there'll be no surprises. can't stress this enough, though. Take your time and select the right auditor. It's a karma thing. You want to make sure, and there's nothing worse than finding out you have the wrong type auditor, meaning not a personality thing, but a professional thing, that an accountant's looking to check a certain box in a certain way, and you don't understand what it takes to get that box tested. So anyway, take your time. That hot tub test, whatever you want to call it, but you're picking out somebody who's going to be your partner for over a year, and then the next year, and then the next year after that. So find the one. Take your time. That's the place to put your time and effort. KPIs, key performance indicators, impress accountants. They love, here's more data. Here's more data points. Here's more data points, and it enhances the integrity of the evidence. But at the end of the day, if you don't have evidence, no matter how lenient your auditor is, they're going to need that meeting of the minds to be able to give you that check. It's a 6-9 month journey at best. We've got our clients through it that much, but they're to be fair, they were smaller scopes, and in all the instances I'm aware of, they didn't know what they didn't know, because they didn't do this little detailed connect the dots that we're doing, that we showed you in this webinar. Anyway, it's with the right attitude, if you relax and approach it as if it were yet another framework, I'd like to tell you, you'd have a high level of confidence in a successful report. That's what we had for you. That's my sum. I hope it was a little more pragmatic. I hope it was a little more, you found things in there. As I said, you've got, if you'd like our checklist or this timeline, let us know. And we've got a survey, and if you just check the box, we'll make sure that we'll send one off to you in an email and a follow-up. You might find them helpful, you might not. You might be already more mature than a checklist. But as always, if you have any questions, comments, a question comes up after the webinar, don't hesitate to rocket it in, and we'll get it answered. Nick, did we have any questions?
Rich, you must have done a fantastic job, because we have no questions at all. But no, that was great. I think I'd from what you've said, I'd sum it up as SOC 2. It's not simple, but it is straightforward. It's a straightforward approach. I do have a question. So,
sorry, Nick, we have no more time for questions.
It's a good one. If you're a startup and you're launching a cloud service, or maybe you're a software provider that's going into the cloud to provide a service, you're going to need to show compliance, probably to both ISO 27001 and SOC 2 in the very near future that you go to market. Which framework would you start with, Rich? 27001 or SOC 2, and why?
Oh, I hate you for asking me these questions that come right from your heart, Nick. You couldn't just send me a softball over. I'm an ISO guy. You know that. I'm an ISO guy. I see SOC. I do. No, SOC makes sense to me. I can see the world it came from. Remember, this is about financial controls, and SOC came out of Enron and accountability, and there's not enough of that. And it's got a little scope creep, and then suddenly it started to appear in an information security manager's world, because it was associated with the service, the integrity of that service. So what would I go with? I would go with ISO, but that's a professional preference, Nick. At the end of the day, it's because I see the value of an ISMS. Now, at the end of the day, though, you're in business to do business, and you're in business to give the customers what they want.
Yep.
If our you know this, Nick, if our customers wanted us to get SOC, we'd get SOC, because you need to provide your customers the assurances they need, and they understand to be, this is what the market it finds acceptable for this type of software as a service. So this is what we're asking you. So it's commercially driven, Nick, and I would never dissuade any customer from going with a SOC 2 if there's money to be made for it. But just understand, for me, the difference between a commercial imperative for implementing controls or or a real risk imperative. And that's why I say I have a professional, I'm always going to go with the purest, follow the risk, go after the risk, and the benefits will go into the service and anything else you provide. I just noticed I pulled up the
Yeah, I've got,
Mark
yeah,
asked
I've
a
just seen
question
it. Yeah.
here. Oh, you got it? Yeah. Oh, all right. It'll take time to scope and gather evidence. When would you expect the clock to start for the 3, 6, 9-month period? The clock starts when you say it does. You see, when you'd sit down with the auditor, Mark, and you say, okay, I am now connecting the dots. I'm going to be doing my control mapping. I don't want you in until I'm ready to go. Okay, but when you call them in, and I call it pull the trigger, that's when the 3 months start. The 3 months of his field work, meaning, okay, it's September 1st, 2021. For the next 90 days, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, the auditor will then start verifying the evidence that's your controls are kicking out. So it starts when you're ready for it to start. The typical timeline I showed you just gave you about 6 to 9 months to prepare to pull that trigger, and then it depends on whether it's a 3-month to a year review after that. But take your time is absolutely my advice. Is take your time, and then you tell the auditor when he starts his field work. And he or she should not start until you're ready. Until you say, okay, I'm ready for you to come take a look at my evidence.
You're welcome, Mark. You're welcome. Okay, that's all of the questions. Rich, thanks very much. That was fantastic. And I guess just the smallest of small sales pitches, preparing for a SOC 2 audit was what this seminar was all about. And Risk Crew, we can help you do that. That's what we do. We can provide as much or as little help for you to prepare for your SOC 2 audit. So if anybody would like any further information or a proposal, please get in touch, and we'll set up a meeting with you. That's it for us. You will very shortly find a video of this webinar on our website, along with all of the other webinars that we've been delivering over the past 12 months. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the day in the sunshine.
Oh, Nick, you're so polite. Can I add one more
Oh,
thing?
hold on.
Yeah, sorry. It's always the American comes up with another thing. Guys, at the end of this, we had like I said, we had a short survey. I think there's 5, 6, 7 questions, and if you want the checklist, those kind of things. But if I could ask you just to take a couple minutes and fill out the form, that's really helpful. The other thing, I'd point you to our website. There's a lot of good blogs up there now about SOC, and you're going to start to see some tools and things out there. So take a look at the website for other articles that we've done on SOC. But if I could bother you to take a couple minutes after this to fill out the survey, I'd be in so your debt. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Cheerio.
Cheerios.